It was one of those nights when everything seemed ordinary at first, the kind of evening where nothing stands out, where you expect to go home, change into something comfortable, and settle in for a quiet night. I remember the crisp air brushing against my cheeks, the city lights reflecting on wet pavement after a light drizzle earlier that day, and the faint sound of traffic humming in the background. I didn't expect anything remarkable to happen. But sometimes, life has a way of throwing you into situations you'll never forget, moments that etch themselves into your memory forever. My name is Emily Carter, and that night I had been at a small gathering after work. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a farewell party for a colleague who was moving to another state. The restaurant was dimly lit, filled with chatter and laughter, and the clinking of glasses echoed over the sound of music playing softly from a corner speaker. I wore a simple black dress and a coat draped over my shoulders. My coworkers, some of whom I barely knew outside of office hours, shared stories and toasted to new beginnings. I smiled, clapped along, and laughed at the right moments, but deep down, I couldn't shake off the feeling of loneliness. When the evening began winding down, many of my colleagues paired off in groups, leaving together to catch cabs or walk down the street for an after-party. I lingered for a bit, sipping the last of my drink, when I realized how quiet it had become around me. That's when I decided to step out. The night was colder than I had expected, and I pulled my coat tighter around me. I had parked a little further down the street, since the main lot was full when I arrived. As I walked, the sound of my heels tapped against the pavement, echoing in the silence of the almost empty street. That's when I noticed them, 3 men walking together, heading in the same direction. They weren't strangers exactly, but they weren't people I knew very well either. I recognized them from the restaurant earlier that evening. The first was Daniel, tall with an athletic build, sandy blonde hair, and a kind of easygoing smile that made people feel at ease. The second was Michael, quieter, with dark hair and deep-set eyes that gave him an air of mystery. The third was James, who had been the life of the party, always cracking jokes and keeping everyone entertained with his quick wit. As fate would have it, they noticed me walking alone. James called out, his voice carrying across the quiet street. "Emily. Hey, where's your car? You shouldn't be walking by yourself this late." I laughed lightly, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. "It's just a block down. I'll be fine." But they didn't seem convinced. Daniel stepped forward, offering a reassuring smile. "We'll walk you. It's no trouble at all." There was something comforting about their presence, and I didn't argue. We fell into step together, and soon, our conversation flowed easily. What started as small talk about work and the farewell party shifted into more personal stories. Michael spoke about his love for photography, something he'd picked up during his college years. James entertained us with tales from his travels, each story more animated than the last. And Daniel, calm and steady, asked questions that showed he genuinely cared to listen. By the time we reached my car, I felt reluctant to end the conversation. The night was still young, and for the first time in a while, I felt alive, as though I were part of something spontaneous and meaningful. I hesitated at my car door, and perhaps they sensed it too, because James grinned and said, "You know, there's this late-night cafe just around the corner. Best coffee in the city, I swear. What do you say? One more stop before heading home." I should have said no. It was already late, and I had work in the morning. But something inside me urged me to say yes. Maybe it was the way the night felt different, the way these 3 men, each so different from the other, made me feel like I belonged in their company. So I agreed. We walked together to the cafe, a small place with warm yellow lights and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. The bell above the door jingled as we stepped in, and we found a booth in the corner. The hours melted away as we talked about life, our dreams, our regrets. I shared things I hadn't spoken aloud in years, and they listened, really listened, as though my words mattered. At some point, laughter turned into comfortable silences, and silences turned into moments where I looked around the table and realized how rare it was to connect so genuinely with people you didn't expect to. Daniel's steady presence felt grounding, Michael's quiet nature made me curious, and James's energy kept the mood light and joyful. They balanced each other out, and somehow, I found myself right in the middle of it. When the cafe finally announced closing time, we stepped back into the night. The streets were emptier now, the city quieter, and the moon hung high above us. None of us seemed ready to say goodbye just yet. We walked aimlessly, laughing at inside jokes we had already built that night, pointing out odd things we passed by, and soaking in the crisp air. Eventually, we ended up at a small park. The swings creaked as the wind pushed them gently, and the streetlights cast long shadows across the ground. We sat on a bench, and that's when the conversation took a deeper turn. Michael spoke about losing someone he loved years ago, and how it shaped the way he saw the world. James admitted that his constant humor was sometimes a mask for the insecurities he carried. And Daniel shared how he had always felt the need to be strong for everyone else, even when he was struggling inside. Their honesty struck me. Here were three men, each opening up in a way I hadn't expected, each trusting me with pieces of themselves. I felt my own walls crumble, and I spoke about the loneliness I had carried, the nights I felt invisible even when surrounded by people. None of them judged me. Instead, they nodded, they listened, and they shared their own vulnerabilities. It was in those raw, unfiltered exchanges that I realized the night had become something extraordinary. It wasn't about the party anymore, or the cafe, or the walk through the streets. It was about the connection that formed between four people who might have gone their separate ways, but instead chose to stay, to share, to be present in a way that rarely happens in our fast-paced lives. Time slipped by unnoticed until I glanced at my phone and saw it was nearly 3 a.m. We all laughed at how quickly the hours had vanished. Reluctantly, we decided it was time to go. They insisted on walking me back to my car again, and when we reached it, there was a moment where none of us wanted to say goodbye. Daniel spoke first. Tonight was different. In a good way. I think we all needed it. Michael nodded. It's not often you get to just be real with people. Thank you for that. James grinned, though his tone was softer than usual. We've got to do this again. Not just tonight's magic, but keeping this connection alive. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. I'd like that. Really,